Welcome back to Big Sky Buckets. I'm Big Sky, and today we're going to talk about the opening night games from last night. One of them, a blowout, but a lot to learn there. The other one, very competitive later in the night. But at the bare minimum, what we come away from this in a positive light is that there were two MVP level performances to start the year, which is at least something. If you're not going to get two great games in an opening night slate, at least you can walk away with two MVP caliber performances and what that could mean going forward into the year. So we'll start with the first game, ring night for the Boston Celtics. They just obliterated the Knicks in this one, 132 to 109. Doesn't even tell the tale. Had the starters played all of this game, I think the Celtics would have won 150 to 100 or something, relatively like that, maybe even less from the Knicks here. It's safe to say if there's going to be any overreactions from this, I know a lot of other content creators out there are going to have incredible overreactions. I am trying to, pump the brakes a little bit because it's just the first game. I know we're all super excited that basketball is back. The Boston Celtics are operating on a completely different tier than any other team. Now, part of this with the small sample size is holy shit, these guys can shoot the fucking three ball to an unbelievable degree. Like, this was one of those games that when they let it go, even though they had just made like 3 or 4 in a row, if Tatum rips this one heavily guarded and it just doesn't even touch net, you just go, there's no way. There's no way. Jason Tatum, by the way, MVP level performance to start the night after a really bizarre offseason where a lot of criticism was coming his way that he wasn't the number one on a championship winning team, even if he was extremely instrumental in winning a championship on a team that only lost 3 times in all of the playoffs and won 64 games in the regular season. 37 points, 10 assists, 4 rebounds, a steal and a block, all in 30 minutes, and that includes 8 threes made and 4 shots he missed all game long. 14 of 18 from the field. That's a hell of a way to start. If you want to campaign yourself as the MVP, this is one way to start. Now, you do play for a loaded team, but a hell of a performance from Jason Tatum. I don't even know where to begin with the Celtics team outside of the Tatum performance. Every time someone shot a 3 ball, it felt like it was going in. There was a moment in this game. Now, they tied the record for 3-pointers made in a regular season game. There was a point in this game, 9 minutes left in the fourth quarter, when the bench was cleared and they were just jacking threes to beat the record. They never got there, but there was a point in this game where like the Celtics were shooting almost 60% from 3, and most of those shot attempts were coming from the 3-point line and not just mid-range at the rim, etc. Unreal. This is a hell of a way to start Missoula Ball Season 2. On the flip side here, and one of the bigger stories in my opinion. Like, the biggest story here is that the Celtics seem to be on a completely different tier from any other teams, just in a 1-game sample size. The other one is that the two teams that commenced in a trade a day before training camp started, in the Knicks and the Wolves, look like they don't have it all together just yet. And I think it's going to take a little bit more time than initially anticipated. The Knicks looked offensively, the numbers would say this wasn't a bad performance from them. They shot close to, at times, above 50% from the field. The 3-ball was aggressively awful from them. That was one of the main concerns. The other one, I just feel like Tom Thibodeau still, and it's weird because he coached them in Minnesota, doesn't know how to play Karl Anthony Towns offensively. There were a lot of post-ups from Cat, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I'd like it to be more 50-50 in terms of post-up shots to 3-point shots, and that was just not the case at all. The times that it looked good is when there was some pick and pops. Karl Anthony Towns finds his way in an action out to the 3 where he can quickly release a shot. But when he was doing post-ups, he'd get double-teamed a lot. and all of a sudden the ball would either get turned over, which is a pretty clear sign of a team that just hasn't figured it out quite yet, because they're still putting everything together. Or it would get to Mikal Bridges, who was the talk of the town last night, in terms of, in a debut with your new team, how bad could it realistically be? And for Mikal, it was truly atrocious. Most people are going to say offensively it was terrible. I would go as far as to say defensively it was worse. There were multiple times in this game where he just looked like a deer in the headlights defensively, had no idea what he was doing, and it's really shocking because, unlike Cat getting there like last month, he's been there since like what, July or something like that. He's been a technically New York Knick for a while, and it still feels like he doesn't really understand the defensive schemes yet, which is rough, and was highlighted by one of the plays in the second quarter. I believe it was early second quarter when Karl-Anthony Towns, there's like a switch happening, and Mikal Bridges is kind of standing by the free throw line, and Karl-Anthony Towns walks up to him, pushes him into the to the perimeter so they can guard either Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum, or was it Derek White who had the ball at the time. But it was just like, damn, like he doesn't even what is he doing? Obviously, everyone's talking about his jump shot. The hitch in the shot is really weird. At one point in the third quarter, I think halfway through, he finally looked like there was no hitch anymore. He finally was getting it off, and it started going in, so that was good for him. But at that point, one of the biggest issues with this offense, in my opinion, was specifically in this matchup. We can talk about as the season progresses, we'll talk more about the Knicks and if they're starting to figure it out offensively and defensively, because both of those, there's still big questions here. When you're playing the Celtics and they're shooting it like they are, this is a numbers game. And if you're trading twos for threes, you're going to lose really quickly. And that's exactly what happened in this game. That's why the Knicks were down at times by 35 points. Sometimes you just lose to the Celtics, and that's okay. It's not the end of the world, especially in the first game of the season. But it did feel like at times like, okay, we're not even hunting for a three right here. We're just going to go for a two. And then it's like not even 30 seconds later, the Celtics get off a three and make it. So then it's like, all right, now we're down by 3. Now we're down by 4. Now we're down by 5. Even if you're scoring every time, you're only scoring 2 and they're scoring 3 and 3 and 3. So one of the things, if this is a team designed to beat the Celtics, who still are not employing Kristaps Porzingis yet, which is probably the scariest thing, you have to find a way to integrate the three ball in more. And one of the issues, in my opinion, offensively, is playmaking. OG barely touched the ball in this one, which is whatever. Josh Hart needs to be able to shoot the three ball a little bit better than he has. Like, if we see his performance from the 76ers series and even some from the Pacers series, that three ball, that would help this offense take a leap forward. And one of the biggest issues there is simply, I think Jalen Brunson is now in a position where he has to be a better playmaker. We had talked about this within the grand scheme of the teams of the Timberwolves and the Knicks. Karl-Anthony Towns is not a great playmaker. He's good at throwing lobs, but now he's back to being a center for this Knicks team. Someone has to take a big step up in terms of helping with facilitating, because there's a lot of times when it's just feels like it's about to devolve into ISO and then they're just going to kick it out really quick, but someone needs to help with creating more actions to get players more open. And part of this could simply just be playing the Celtics, but my first impressions from this game is that the offense needs to be a little bit more fluid. There needs to be a little bit more ball movement so that you can take more threes and make more threes. But yeah, that's my quick take on this game. Celtics look tier above the rest. The Knicks, and as we're about to talk about in this next game, the Timberwolves, they are just it's going to take a little bit longer for them to figure this out, because a couple of these guys, Mikal Bridges and Karl-Anthony Towns, don't seem acclimated to the way the Knicks want to play. And also, my specific take is that Tom Thibodeau or some assistant head coach has to come up with a more creative way to get Karl Anthony Towns involved in places where he's going to impact the offense a little bit more, which would be the 3-point land. But having said that, shout out to the Celtics. I'll be interested to keep watching this as they progress, and we will monitor this forward. So moving on to the Lakers, Timberwolves. Lakers won 110-103. It was a much better game, especially by the third quarter when the Timberwolves finally figured out how to play their style of basketball, especially defensively. But let's start with the Lakers. The story from the Lakers is that what an MVP caliber performance from Anthony Davis. In 38 minutes, he gave you 36 points, 16 rebounds, 4 assists, I believe, and 3 blocks. Just incredible two-way impact from him all night long, especially in that third quarter. At the third quarter, 2 things happened simultaneously. One is right before AD figured it out offensively, where his whole game was clicking. The Timberwolves figured out, we can play our style of basketball, we can play our style of defense, and we can get back into this game. And then right as they were on the precipice of making this comeback and tying the game, they were down 4, Anthony Davis just started hitting incredible shots over Rudy Gobert, and he just couldn't be stopped, and they started trading points again. And then everything in AD's game was clicking. He started getting a couple more blocks at that point. They just couldn't score around the rim for the Timberwolves, and they just had to jack up threes. And that's kind of where the game, it was going the Lakers' way. Then the Timberwolves kind of came back a little bit. And then the Lakers were like, no, this is what we're going to do. And part of this was just the fact that JJ called a timeout right at the right time to get the team together and have a understanding of, we're going to run a couple of sets here to get some more points on the board to stop this scoring drought. And look, if this is the Anthony Davis you're going to get, I know JJ Redick has been talking about how they're going to run, he's going to be the hub of the offense, along with almost the entirety of the defense here, because he's kind of one-man army defensively and has been for a couple of years. I mean, if he stays healthy and we're getting this, if he can actually consistently string together games, night in, night out, something like this, I'm not saying 36 points every single night, but if he can average like 27, I know that's also a lot of points, he could easily be in the MVP running. And this team would be very good. I still think it's still on the table for one of LeBron or Anthony Davis to get injured just because they played in the Olympics, and I think they both played like 70 games last year, so we'll see. Not really talking about that today, but in terms of the Lakers, I like what I saw. I want to see more. When they play a really good offense, like it's one game sample size, maybe the Minnesota Timberwolves will turn around offensively, then I'll have a better understanding of what we're going to get from this Lakers team going forward. For the Timberwolves, the biggest issue here was obviously their offense. Just like with Karl Anthony Towns, just like with Mikal Bridges for the Knicks, Julius Randle, the box score is deceiving. It doesn't really tell the tale of a guy who has no idea what he was doing for this offense. A lot of this is one thing that needs to change. My biggest overreaction from this game is simply that I think Dante DiVincenzo probably needs to start. His three-point shooting is extremely important. Even when it's not going in, it feels like it's going to, and that draws the defense. Anthony Edwards quite literally has to do everything for his starting lineup. Julius Randle was helpful at times, but until he figures out how to play next to these guys, or Jaden McDaniels starts making more threes, there's just that clunky fit offensively that we talked about ahead of the season that many people have talked about. That's what we got tonight. Like, the three-point shooting was not great. The spacing was not great. And it felt like a lot of times there just wasn't enough playmaking. Chris Finch only played Mike Conley 20 minutes, and I think it's time someone has to swap with him. I think having him come off the bench is good, but if he's only going to play 20 minutes, then you need like a rhythm shooter that can help with playmaking like Dante DiVincenzo. He's more of a Swiss Army knife and an elite shooter. So just having him, a little bit of defense, and someone to help with the burden of playmaking, because as we saw last night, if Anthony Edwards is not going to take a playmaking leap, which he really didn't want to, every time he got the ball, he really wanted to shoot it in this one, then there's going to be a pretty hard ceiling on this team offensively, and they're going to need to get better. There's really not too much to talk about that hasn't already been said with the Knicks, because I feel the same way with the Timberwolves. Chris Finch has his work cut out for him. And I know it's going to take, game experience is going to lead to development in terms of getting your offense the way you want it to, just like with the Knicks. It's really there's two stories here through two games. MVP performances from Anthony Davis and Jason Tatum. The teams that made a trade a day before training camp look like they have a lot of work to be done before they really hit their stride. And that's really what last night's slates were. That's what I got for you guys today. Shout out to Anthony Davis. Shout out to Jason Tatum. Incredible performances, and got me hyped for this year of basketball. And then on the flip side, teams to monitor in the Knicks and the Wolves, because if it takes too long, especially for the Wolves, they might find themselves sliding down the standings, and trades will have to be on the table for them. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, listening. Subscribe, like, comment. We'll be back tomorrow, the next day. Might start doing some shorts again, just because there's going to be a lot of games tonight. I'm not going to be able to talk about all of them. I might not be able to watch all of them. I'll try my best, though. But I'll see you guys later. Peace.